Welcome to the 5% to Greatness podcast. I'm Rick Nieuwenhoven, owner of New Vision, member of Entrepreneurs Organisation South Australia. The views of the hosts and the guests are of a personal nature and do not represent any organisation. Enjoy today's show. Hi everyone, I've got Andy Bailey here with me. Andy, how are you, mate?
Very good, very good.
How's Nashville at the moment?
Nashville is hot and steamy right now.
Well, I'm jealous. Adelaide is cold and miserable, so I would trade with you any day.
Yeah, we'll be cold and miserable and complaining about cold and miserable when we get there.
Good work. So thanks for coming on. And just so everyone knows, I met Andy at the at EMP1, or the previously known as the Birthing of Giants, this year. And I really enjoyed your speech, by the way, Andy. Thanks for investing some time this year.
Absolutely, glad to do it.
And I'll give you a compliment from the get-go. Like, I am a non-jewelry person whatsoever. My wife even got agitated with me because I wouldn't even wear my wedding ring. But for some reason, your black wristband has adorned my wrist since that course. And it hasn't come off. So all I can assume is it's the message.
That's right.
It's I'm a doer, so it's very motivational. So what I want to do is start with where you began, and I know you mentioned that you had a couple of challenges at times, so I thought that would be a good place to start. So in the beginning, you started off as a sales guy and then moved into the telecommunications industry.
Yeah, I think life in general is going to be challenging. Entrepreneurship is just adds a bit of complexity to those challenges, and we crazily welcome those challenges every day and are grateful to have them as much as we can say that we are. Yeah, I was like most folks, I was in college and looking for a job and something to do, and was taking a personal selling class. We have that kind of here in the States where they teach you how to sell, which is fairly natural for me. And I was in a class and I was recruited out of the class to sell, at the time, what was known as cellular telephones. And back when I was in college, they were mounted in your car, and they were, several $100s, if not $1,000 plus. And not a lot of people had them, and not a lot of people bought them. So they needed some salespeople to do this. Everybody was 1099, which is contract employees and commission based only. And paid pretty well. So as a senior, going to as a junior, I started, and as a senior, I was making a lot of money, six figures plus. And in college, when you're making six figures plus, it's a little bit of insanity. The challenge with it at the same time was I was making really, really good income. But if I took any time off to do anything other than, work in sales, it cost me a lot of that income. So I started looking around for ways to create recurring revenue, something I could sell once and get paid for it over and over. And at the time, pagers or beepers, as everybody might recall, and some people listening to this won't even know what the hell that is, so I have to Google it. Those you sold one time and you got paid over and over. So I kind of walked away from this really elaborate income to start a recurring income business in pagers. So that was kind of the start of it. I started this little company called NationLink Paging in the attic of my home, and my pool table was the inventory room, and my girlfriend did the billing, who's my wife today, and we got cranking on that, and we did it in a little bit of a unique way and grew it really, really fast. But that's where we got started.
So how did you grow the business really quickly? I think that's a good point.
Back then, if you wanted to buy a pager, you stood in line. Think about the Apple store today. It's the same kind of scenario. You stood in line at a pager store, usually in the urban areas. So in my case, it would have been in Nashville, in Chattanooga, and Knoxville, some of the more urban cities. And you got your pager. And there was no distribution channel for the rural markets. And I'm a rural guy. I grew up in a rural county, and I wanted to create a way for somebody to walk into a location in a rural setting and pick it up, as opposed to having to drive, 2-3 hours to go to get a pager. So we took a model where we took a pager and we created the concept was I wanted a pager to be bought in a rural market as easy as a loaf of bread. And we took a pager and we manufactured a box and an activation process, which was an envelope that sat in the back of the box, and somebody could literally walk into a retail setting and take it off the shelf and pay for it, and then take it home and called our call center and was able to activate it. Now today that sounds very, very simplistic, but back then it didn't exist. So we had about 300 or so distribution points from these places won't mean a lot to your listeners, but over about a 700 to 800 mile radius of Nashville. Anything that had foot traffic, that's where we called on to distribute our product. And that foot traffic created a fairly substantial business over a very short period of time, and it was all recurring revenue.
So at the beginning, or obviously there was a point where you decided you wanted to potentially get out of the business. So did you have any challenges at that beginning point when you thought you wanted to get out, or was it just an easy, clean swipe? Here you go, see you later, I don't want it anymore?
So back then, in technology is one of those businesses, and it's as true today as it was back then, that changes about every 18 to 24 months. So we were trucking along really, really good in this pager business, and I built about a $6 million recurring revenue company, and actually had the opportunity to sell it, which I declined at the time. Hindsight, I probably should have taken it, because the pager business disappeared over about a 24-month period of time. So we went from, $6 million in revenue down to 3, and all the way down to, I think, about 1.8 in 24 months. And we, in that time period, had to shift over to cellular and some of the more, handhelds and radios and things like that. Over the course, we owned that business for 18 years, Rick. So in that 18-year period, we went from, beepers in a box to manufacturing product overseas and importing it from China for GPS location services and software development and, online sales. So it was every 18 months or so reinventing that particular business. We did have it sold in early 2000. Ultimately, the business sold in 2011 for the final time, but sold it in 99-2000 timeframe on a note, which was, you were talking about, did we have trouble selling it? Not really, other than the guy that bought it didn't pay for it, and we ended up ultimately having to take it back. And we could talk a little bit more about that if you want to.
Sure. So I guess what I was talking about, I thought I remembered when you were giving your speech at EMP, you wanted to get out, but you couldn't. The structure of your business, you couldn't get out. Was that a challenge for you?
Well, I couldn't get out. I needed to build it so it could be sold, so that I didn't have to go with the company. That was the second time we sold it. The first time we sold it, I had to be there, and I agreed to be there under contract. But after I took it back, I needed to recreate it so that I was irrelevant. The systems and processes were duplicatable in a way that I could just hand it to the next buyer. That's the reference that was just in the talk.
So what was the key? What did you have to do differently with the structure so you weren't part of the sale?
So the first thing that I had to be able to do personally as leader of the organization was learn to delegate and learn to trust in a way that my people could do the work that needed to be done so that I could get out of the way. Not be the overlord of the organization any longer, which I tended, my tendencies as a, high D or A or whatever the personality type label you want to put on it tends to lend me towards. And we did that through, in many ways, through the implementation of the Rockefeller habits, which is, what you were learning about and learned about through EO and EMP.
Yeah. So did you sort of put in a second in charge? And so were you involving yourself in the business at all, or were you taking yourself right out altogether?
Well, there were times towards the end before the sale that I would take weeks and weeks and months off. And, I was more of a, my role at that time was keep the business 18 months ahead. So what's coming down the pike that I needed to make strategic decisions on, I truly could work on the business all the time as opposed to being involved in the day-to-day operations.
Okay. As I said earlier, I interviewed Brian last week, and he had a great insight where he said that his mistake number one was when he tried to take himself out as the visionary leader. It affected the culture because the person that he replaced himself with wasn't the right type of person. Did you have any sort of struggles like that?
I did not, because I did not replace myself. There wasn't a number two in the operation. There wasn't somebody who stepped in as president, and what I did was I created systems and processes that did that for me. So I actually believe that, you can have an individual that's a figurehead or the leader or that runs the organization, or you can have an organization that runs the organization. And we did it as an organization.
So what do you mean you feel like you can have an organisation run the organisation? Is that just by empowering the people that are inside it?
Absolutely. And once you set the vision correctly, and then you get the initiatives down, or the goals for a time period, call it a year. These are the 5 things that we must accomplish this year, and you start breaking that down into actionable items over the course of a quarter, and the course of a month, and 2 weeks, and daily. And everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to go do in order to achieve what you want as the leader. It gets fairly simple pretty quickly.
So obviously you must have built up a reasonable staffing under you with the company. What did you get at your highest point?
There was, highest point was more, but during this time period was probably close to 40.
Mm-hmm. And how did you address the culture? Did you always have a good culture in the organisation, or did you have to do things to improve the culture?
We didn't always have a good culture. There was a point at which, around that same 2000 time frame, that when I was just incredibly frustrated with everything and had to do it by design, and it built, the culture had just kind of shown up. It's always there, right? Mm. But you realize pretty quickly that you let it happen to you as opposed to making it happen the way you want it to happen. So in reading Rockefeller Habits and listening to a lot of the teachers inside of EO and going through the Birthing of Giants EMP program, I learned that was the case, and there was another way to do things. So we came back from a lot of those programs, created values and purpose and structure that people could kind of stay within, think of as standards or guideposts. And those were set by me. And as long as they were inside of those standards and guideposts and made decisions based on the values and purpose of the organization, it all worked out.
Did you find that trying to implement those techniques with the staff, that they were receptive straight away, or did you have to let some go and replace them with people that were more aligned?
Yeah, no, they're not receptive to anything that has the change word in it right away. I think it takes a little bit of time for it to prove itself to people, and we see that in our coaching today, which we'll talk about a little bit too. But nothing is easy when you first start. It wasn't easy for me. I remember a time coming back and just to simply implementing daily huddles, and I would call Vern and I'd say, Vern, man, Vern Harnish, the author of Rockefeller Habits, and I'd say, Vern, my daily huddle sucks. I don't know what to do. And he'd say, well, let me get on the phone and listen to what you guys are doing. I'll give you some insights. And he'd listen and give me some insights, and we just had to keep working at it until we got it right. And just, frankly, just like that bracelet on your wrist says, we didn't try it, we did it.
Yeah, we'll bring that the huddle up in the coaching, because I got a question for you there too.
Sure.
So I guess obviously you said you sold it once, but the guy didn't pay. That would have been a pretty stressful period for you back then. What happened?
Yeah, so it was a roll-up. There were multiple companies, and of course we were in the paging distribution business. The concept behind what they wanted to do was really nice. The buyer, along with the other acquisitions, were all paging carriers. So they had infrastructure, tower, and systems. We didn't have any towers and systems. We were just marketing and salespeople. So we were buying airtime, essentially, from people who own towers, but not from these guys. So he was rolling up a tower system around the Southeast United States, and then our company was the one that would come in and, as part of the acquisition, be the sales and marketing arm for this whole larger company. And we were spending about $500,000 a year in infrastructure costs, paying other people for their infrastructure, which would automatically transfer over to this new co. So the idea of it was really good. The timing of it was absolutely horrendous. So by the time they got down to purchasing our company, they were out of money. The markets had shifted and they were unable to raise any more money. And we went through with the sale on a note. And about 6 months in, it became very clear that that note was not going to be paid. And they had taken over our business and run up a bunch of bills, et cetera. So we ultimately took it back. I had dinner with the guy, and he was willing to give our portion back if we would assume the debt that it had incurred in that time period. So we took it back with a substantial amount of debt, about $1.2 million, and ended up having to work our way out of that hole over about a 2-year period of time. Incredibly stressful. I learned a lot of personal lessons during that time period. Number one, don't sell a business on a note. We had to remortgage the house and run the credit cards and call vendors and hold them off. And you find out who your friends were pretty quickly, lay people off. We even went to the extent of going to our team and saying, "Look, you got to take a pay cut, but we'll bank it." So it would be like me saying to you, "Rick, I got to cut your pay by 40%, but I'll take this invisible amount of money that I don't have. I'll put it in this invisible bank over here, and I promise you within 2 years I'll get you back to your regular salary, and I'll pay you this back pay with interest." Not knowing where the hell how I was going to do that or where it was going to come from, but some people stayed and took that, and some people left, and we did make good on that, and we did it inside a 2-year time frame just from brute force effort. But as you said, a lot of stress and a lot of work.
So how did you deal with the stress? Obviously, that's a hideously stressful period. So, but you're here telling the story, so you must have handled it in some way.
I don't know that I did anything to deal with it other than long hours and not much sleep. And my wife is a saint for putting up with me during that time period. And I had a good group of managers in the organization that rallied around to just make things happen that needed to happen. I had a lot of people that believed in me as well. So
I guess you would have just been pretty open and honest with the staff then, I take it, if you had to have that conversation about taking a temporary pay cut, and it must have been an honour for you that a lot of the staff sort of stayed and said, yeah, let's work through it.
Yeah, we actually I took the managers to my house on a Friday, knowing I was going to meet with this guy on Sunday, and we sat in the living room and passed out beers, and I had a whiteboard or flip chart. And we had two choices at that moment: to either go have this meeting and discuss getting the business back, or plan B was we're going to leave and we're going to start over. And I had already had space arranged. I had a friend in EO that was going to let me borrow some space, and we had a name, and we kind of knew how to do the business, and we were going to leave it and start over. And the staff were the ones that made that decision to go take it back. So it wasn't all me that said this in isolation. It was us that made the decision to go get it back, and get it back knowing that we were going to have to do these things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all right, that's a fantastic story, and thanks for sharing. During that time, you were also in EO, I'd assume, and you did EMP, and I guess that must have been very powerful for you.
Yeah, so I've been in EO since the late 90s, and this was around 2001 time period. And so I was in EO. I had not gone to EMP yet, or BOG is what they called it back then. I graduated from that in 2008, so I would have gone in 2005. So I'd already been through the process of putting this thing back together and getting it back on its feet before I really discovered EMP. Now, I did meet Vern and learned about the Rockefeller habits around 2004, and that's when things really changed for us.
What was the biggest takeaway for you, implementation-wise, for you with the Rockefeller habits, if I made you pick one thing?
People matter.
Yeah. Awesome. And so then it spawned and evolved, and you created Petra?
Yeah, so we put everything back together, and the big lesson for me personally, and I talk to entrepreneurs about this all the time. A lot of entrepreneurs, Rick, and this is not a wrong belief; it's just a belief. They believe that they are going to put everything that they can into their organization in order to grow it, so that they'll one day will sell it and be rich. And for me, that's the way I believed up until the time that when I did sell it, I didn't get rich. I got actually a lot poorer, right? Mm. So my lesson was I'm going to use my business to build my wealth so that when I do sell it, I don't need to sell it to be rich. Mm-hmm. So we put a plan together, my wife and I, and we really worked hard to turn the business around and make it highly profitable, so that we could take cash out and do things with it, so that when it was time to sell it again. And my forum reminds me of this statement all the time from a presentation that I did in forum, was I could sell it for nothing, just not less than nothing. And when they asked me how much do I want for the business, and my answer was that. Mm. So that was a big lesson for me. It was like, build your wealth as you go as an entrepreneur, not necessarily waiting till the end, because the end may not come.
Absolutely. It's sort of, I can't remember, I think his name was Rick. He was a speaker in New Zealand at Ignite. I'll try and find out his full name, but he was of the same philosophy. He was into investor merchant banking, and he was saying invest in cows, not pig. With the same analogy, he wanted that ongoing revenue, money in the bank, rather than just waiting for the end for the big sale. And I guess it's an interesting mentality as well. I guess before I started EO, I didn't have an end date with my company. I didn't think about wanting to sell it. It's the business that I've created and sort of formulated and want to grow. So I haven't really had a picture of wanting to get out. EO sort of shaped and changed that a little bit for me, though. Anyway.
Yeah, I think, and through the coaching that we do today, one of the very first things that we do when we engage with a company is we sit down with, the owner, the leader. Sometimes it's partners, sometimes it's the leadership team, and we do kind of what we did at EMP, a one-page personal plan. And it's always surprising to me the number of people who have a business plan but not a life plan. Mm. And the reason that we do that is exactly what you're talking about. What do I want for my life personally as, the owner of this business? And then let's make sure the business is built in a way to serve what you want for yourself. Don't become the slave to the master of the business. Let's make the business the slave to the master of your life.
So if we talk about Petra in a little bit more detail, I guess your model is interesting to me because you've got more of a departmentalized team rather than one person just as the coach. So what's your strategy there?
Well, it goes back to the same thing when I was selling cell phones and transitioned to pagers. When I decided to go into the coaching business, I didn't want to just be selling time for money. I wanted to build an organization. I didn't want to be on vacation going, well, I could be somewhere else making money right now. I wanted it to make money and produce a profit when I wasn't there. So, and the only way to do that is to grow an organization. The other piece of it is what I've found is no coach knows everything. I don't know everything that there is to know about business, but I can put a team of coaches together that I can go to and take a team approach with coaching, so that all of we call our clients members, so that all of our member companies can have access to that team. So we have, experts in finance and experts in branding and experts in the people side of an organization. So we have all of these coaches now that lend a very special expertise personally, although they all implement the Rockefeller habits, and we can draw from each other's experiences, which has been really powerful.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was talking to a coach here in Adelaide last week, and I was saying there's a lot of coaches now that out there in the market that haven't necessarily walked the walk in business. And for me, I think part of being a successful coach is being able to empathise with the business owner as well, and having walked that same path. Is that a criteria that's important to you?
It is. All of our coaches are former entrepreneurs. All of them have owned and operated businesses and been a part of exponential growth inside of an organization and sold either a piece or all of that organization. So all of them meet that criteria today. And we look for that when we're recruiting and looking at who we want to be a coach. Most of them did that exact same thing using the Rockefeller habits. So not only do they have an experience in entrepreneurship and growing businesses or business units inside of itself, but they have it with the habits, which makes it really easy to go into an organization and somebody says, this won't work for me. They go, yeah, it will. Let me tell you why. I lived it. And I thought like you did, but let me tell you what I found out.
I found, so we just had our first strategy day last week, and a few people said to me, oh, Rick, you could probably do it yourself. And I actually found a stronger benefit in getting an external voice in to help conduct it. I think it really energized the staff compared to the standard same old voice conducting that sort of style structured day program. Is that something that you find with your experience as well?
Yeah, I had somebody facilitate my planning sessions at NationLink. So I totally agree. The biggest thing that you have is it gives you, the owner of the business, entrepreneur, leader, whatever you want to call it, a chance to participate. And it's so rare that you get the opportunity to actually participate as opposed to lead the room. Most of your meetings, internal meetings, you're not participating. You may think you are, but most of you're leading. People are looking for you to make a decision. But when you get in there with a really good facilitator, somebody who can make you not lead and make you participate, it's a powerful, powerful thing. So
what are your key philosophies? You follow the Yoda-isms, is that right? But what else are your key philosophies with Petra?
So we work to change behaviors of an organization. So what we don't want to do is just teach them a bunch of skills. We want them to change behavior. And that goes down to the individual level in every organization. The other thing that we do as a coaching organization is we involve the entire organization, not just leadership. And that's a little bit different than what you'll see from other coaches. I was in Calgary last week, and we had, I think, 48 people in a room for a planning session. And that sounds crazy, but that's the entire company. So you can imagine how aligned that the entire business is because they've set through that whole planning session themselves. Not to mention when they leave the planning session, everybody has their priorities, their rocks, and a plan to achieve them. And obviously we put it in our own software and we manage it from there.
That's interesting. Because that is a little bit different to the standard. How do you manage a planning day with the whole organisation there? That's a lot of opinions to manage.
Yeah, so we do some pre-survey to gather data. So we don't have to, gather the data in the room. We just bring it up from a survey that we do prior. We have a very structured process, and we follow the same process each time. Now we add components of learning as we go. We have what we call a playbook, and we created a playbook pretty early on in the coaching practice so that all of our coaches do it the same way. So we could take one coach and plug them into a company, or somebody else could go do that because we follow the process. The only difference in doing a planning session from that standpoint, Rick, that has 10 people in it versus 80 people in it, is in the afternoon when we're creating individual priorities, you just end up breaking up into more groups. So rather than having two groups of 5 with 10 people, you may end up with 20 different groups of 5.
Interesting. I want to. How do we handle change in the workplace? Because I know we spoke about it earlier, and it's something that I also have a challenge with as well. And I think of John DeHart when he was talking about culture at EMP, and he had this ballot box that he wanted to get people to nominate core values, and it took 6 months to get traction. Is it just the key to success in implementing change just persistence?
I think it's two things. I think that is absolutely one of them. We have lots of times we'll go back into a room and get recommitment from a group. So we work with about 60 companies across North America today, and not all of them are all the way bought in all the time, and they're at different stages, right? So sometimes we have to go in and say, look, I feel like I care as the coach. I feel like I care more about this than you guys do. Let's talk about recommitment. So it's no different than exercise or working out or whatever it is that you commit to over the time. It may wane a little bit and you have to kind of recommit. So that's a piece of it. You have to be persistent. Leadership has to be in. So whoever the leader is in an organization or leadership team, they have to be able to stand in front of that group going, hey guys, this is not something that I've dreamed up and it's going to go away in 3 months if you ignore it. It's going to be here and this is the way we're going to do it. And then they have to walk that talk. So they have to set the example. You cannot, as a leader, ask your team to do shit that you're not willing to do yourself.
Makes sense to me. The key to a successful huddle. I'm on version 3 of the huddle. I guess Australians are a little bit more cynical in character. So I keep getting sort of the resistance of, what a waste of time. What are we doing this for? We just, we can just have a quick chat at the photocopier. And I guess we're at that smaller stage. We've got 11 people in the office, so they find it easier just to have these micro talks, even though they are destabilizing to the concentration. I guess what's the key to getting acceptance in a successful huddle in the business?
So I think the biggest, I'll say it this way, because this is the way I say it. A daily huddle needs to be a good use of time, and it will never be the best use of time for everyone. So they need to know that it should be a good use of time. And if you start thinking about it and asking the question, how do we make this a good use of time? Because it may not be the best use of time for the sales guy, because the best use of his time is in face-to-face with a client, right? Mm-hmm. But it's got to be a good use of time. And one way to do that is to always have as relevant information as possible. The biggest destroyer of a huddle is people bringing not relevant information. I see it all the time where people show up and they just regurgitate their calendar. Today I'm meeting with Steve at 10. Today I'm meeting with Mary at 11. Today I'm meeting with John at 12. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is what's important about those meetings. What are you going to accomplish? What did you learn yesterday inside of the organization? What did you learn outside of the organization from a client? What's going on today that everybody needs to know? Not what you're doing, but what's important about what you're doing. And I've got a cheat sheet on our website at petracoach.com that walks through how you create and deliver good huddle content. Just a daily huddle cheat sheet, and you can download it there. It might be helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Andy. I must admit, just to bang on about it, I guess, and maybe someone can learn from my mistakes. I guess with my version 3, the constant denominator is each time I've been changing the content. So I think that's 100% right. I haven't been able to get the content correct for the staff. I think version 3 so far has been a lot better. And I guess, maybe it's... Have you looked at, or do you survey your staff to find out what they would find interesting from a huddle?
No, and I think that's a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't mean literally dangerous. I just think that you're never going to please everybody, because it's got to be a good use of time, not the best use of time. So everybody's not going to walk away going, "Wow, that was amazing." But they should walk away going, wow, I learned 3 things that are important for me to know. Mm-hmm. Do you involve everyone? Does everybody speak at your huddle?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. And how many people?
So we have 10 people.
Perfect. And do they prepare for the huddle prior to coming to the huddle?
I would hope so. I'm not convinced that everyone does, but I would hope so.
So if you'll use the form that's on our website, or better yet, subscribe to our software, which makes them use it, you would know, because they got to bring a piece of paper with them every day.
Right.
If you use the software, they bring an iPad or their phone or whatever. But that you would know that they were prepared because they've sat down and gotten prepared for it. So preparation prior is key. And when I say prior, the best way to do that is the night before. So today, before I leave the office, and I've already put some information in the huddle for tomorrow, I'll be fully prepared for it before I leave. Not 2 minutes before it starts. But today's the best time for me to think through, what did I learn today that I need to tell everybody tomorrow? And what's going on tomorrow that I need to let everybody know? And then the other key, Rick, is if you follow the format, it's a series of connections. So if you guys are 10, and I got in my head, you're standing in a circle of 10 people, the first thing you're going to talk about is what's up. So what's up from yesterday or what's up from today? And that could be a lot of different things. And it just goes around the room. So if you go to the left, you might start and go, yesterday I had an interview with Andy and I learned these two things. And then the next person next to you to your left is going to say, this is what happened yesterday and what happens today. Here's what's up. And it's what's up all the way around the room so that you keep that speed in the room. So it's not one person talking for an entire 45 seconds. It's one person talking for 3 seconds and it goes to the next person. So you get speed. And then you go to the next round, which might be a KPI or priority review. And then you go to the next round, which might be stocks and needs. And then you go to the next round, which would be top priority for the day. That's the structure that we teach. And that speed of round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4 keeps it high, that energy high in the room. And then, always start on time, always end on time. Make sure that you start with energy. And we all just play music really loud or, do something to create energy in the room, and always end with energy. You have a set of core values you've created for your business, I'm sure. So pick one of those and do a cheer to core values. If you watch a football team or a baseball team, or as you were talking about your teams that you do some work with, every time that they huddle or have a sideline, they don't just meander off after it. They cheer. They do something to create energy as they walk away.
I'll do that. I'll do that today, and I reckon they're going to laugh at me very loudly. But I'll try that one because I think that's a very good idea.
So look at your wrist. It says "No try, only do," just as a quick reminder. And then, yes, they will laugh at you. Yes, it will be uncomfortable. Yes, they're a bunch of grown adult people, and it's weird to do that. But I promise you, if you keep that up for 90 days, it will be part of your culture forever.
So you mentioned your coaching software. So for people that subscribe, what's in it for them? What are they getting access to?
The full suite of Rockefeller Habits is built into this software. So imagine, all the daily huddle information is in there. So here's an example. You probably have people out of the 10 that aren't available to attend every huddle.
Yes.
So they could still have their information if you're using the software in here, and it can be reported in the huddle in their absence, and they can go back in and review the huddle that happened in their absence. So they can stay connected with the organization even though they may not be there. Mm-hmm. So managing the huddle is in here, managing your weekly huddle is in here, managing all your priorities. So if you're doing quarterly rocks or quarterly priorities, they get put in here. You can see green, yellow, red dashboards. There's even a survey tool inside of here. There's net promoter score for your team, or morale survey if you call it that. It's got a task management tool built into it. All of the one-page documents are in here, full one-page plan management. Everything that's inside of Rockefeller Habits Plus is built into this software. And it's only $5 per month per person.
Awesome. I'll have a look when we're finished. Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, just go to aligntoday.com and set up a trial, try it out.
Sure, no dramas. So I've taken up plenty of your time, so thank you very much. I just want to say, have you got any last words of inspiration, or did you want to ask me a question, or before we go?
So you've been doing the habits for a while, and starting EMP, and what do you see as the biggest hurdle to somebody getting started with the habits?
Well, I think the biggest one is procrastination. I'm big on people not procrastinating, and even I've noticed speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs, there's still a lot of procrastination in entrepreneurs, and it's amazing actually. But outside of that, I think it's just having the courage to change. And because sometimes I feel like I'm bringing stuff to the table, and I'm getting judged here, and they're like, "Oh, what's this wishy-washy bullshit that Rick's bringing this time?" Getting people to buy into it can be a challenge at times.
So when we have people call us for coaching, which is a lot, we always ask, and I'll state it this way. One of two things needs to exist for implementation to be successful. Either an individual needs to be so frustrated with where they are that they're willing to change. And that's where I was in my business. I was just completely frustrated. Going home at night, complaining to the wife, all that. Or, and these can exist in tandem or separately, or they need to be so fearful of missing an opportunity, meaning they can see that their business can be so much greater than it is today. They have an opportunity on the horizon, and they know where they are and how they do things today is not going to get them there. Without one of those two or both things existing, you're not going to make change.
Yeah, and that's a great example, because I'd be in the second category. For me, yep. I know where I want to go, and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. And and for me, the fear of not changing and not getting there is the driver for me. And I'll keep trying and keep motivating until I get the system perfected that everyone is working fully functional in it.
Well, if I can help you in any way, man, there's tons of documents for download on our website that leads you through a lot of this stuff, worksheets and things like that. So you can go to petracoach.com and download anything that you want, or send me a text or an email, and I'm happy to hop on a call and help you any way I can.
No dramas, Andy. I really appreciate it. And I really thank you very much for your time. It's Monday afternoon over there, so these time zones are a bit of a challenge. But thanks for hopping on, and I'll spread it out to our EMP and greater network, and hopefully people get some value.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.